Kal Kadosh, Boker Or, Masechet Bava Metzia Daf Yod Aleph Amud Aleph, which means 11a1. Okay, we are starting on the Mishnah. The Mishnah is 2, 4, 6, 7 lines down. It says the Mishnah, Ra'otan Ratzin Achar Metzia Achar Tzevi Shavur Achar Gozalot Shelo Parchu Ve'amar Zachta Li Sadi Zachta Lo. So what does that mean? Imagine right now you see somebody that he's running after hefker, something which is hefker, metzia, something which is a lost object, which is hefker, right? So for example, he's running after tzvi shavur, so he's running after a deer that is going to be wounded, right? And the deer goes into his field, right? Or after gozalot, which are like the little tiny birds that they can't fly, right? That means they're too small to fly, so the little birds, yeah, which again they're going to be watched into the field. So now he comes and he says that my field is going to acquire it with kinyan chatzer that we already spoke about, which is basically talking about the concept that the chatzer is going to come and make a type of a kinyan. So therefore, in such a case, yeah, what happens? He says zachtalo, the field is going to acquire it for him, right, without any problem. Chazak uruch. Hayat tzvi ratz ketargo o sheyegos lo mafrichin. But if you have a regular deer, meaning it's not wounded, or you have gozalot, which are the birds, but they could fly. So therefore, and he says, Zachtali Sadi Lomar Klum, he didn't say anything. Now the reason why is because his field cannot watch over it. Meaning, if it could be watched over in my field, so therefore my field can acquire. But if it's just passing by my field, you can't just say, my field is going to acquire it, and now acquires it. Why? Because it's not shamur. It's not watched over in my field. Okay? Fine. So Amar Rav Yehuda Shmuel says the Gemara, says Rav Yehuda in the name of Shmuel. Yeah, he says like this: Vehu sheomed betzad sadeu. He comes and he says that's only going to be when the bala sadeh is going to be on the side of the field, which means that only if he's on the side of the field and he says such a thing is he going to acquire it. V'tikni lei. So we're going to come, right, and we are going to. So the Gemara says, so why can't the field just come and acquire it? So he comes and he says, the Amar of Yosef Rav Chanina says of Yosef Rav Chanina, Chatzero shel Adam koneh lo shelo midato. The chatzer of a human being is going to acquire it even shelo midato. What does it mean shelo midato? Even without him knowing. Which means that it actually comes out that right now, according to Rav Yehuda Shmuel, he has to be beside his field. And he's saying, I want my field to acquire it. That's what it means when it says, Omed betzad sadeu. However, though, right, the Gemara asks, 1 second, Rabbi Yosef Rav Chanina says, you don't need that. All you have to say is that it's automatic. Why is it automatic? Your field acquires even without your knowledge. So answers the Gemara, Hanemile, when do we say these words of Rabbi Yosef Rav Chanina, that your chatzer is going to acquire even if you're not beside it? Bechatzera mishtameret. Only in a chatzer which is watched on its own. So for example, it's got a gate. So since the field has a gate, so therefore it's watched on its own, meaning that, the second it goes into your field, gamarnu, that's it, there's nothing else that you need to do. Aval bechatzer shena mishtameret, but if it's a chatzer which is not gated, iomed betzad sadeu im, only if you're beside the field, then yes, it could acquire, lo, and if not, it does not acquire, and therefore you have to actually be beside the field. So says the Gemara, Umena teimra, how do you know the chatzer shelo mishtameret, that by a chatzer which is not going to be guarded, only if it's going to be, if you're going to be beside the field and you do acquire, and if you're not going to be beside the field, you're not going to acquire. The Tanya was willing to know Braita, hayomed ba'ir. If you're in the city and you come and you say, Yodea ani shomed sheomer sheyesh li basadeh poalim shachu lo yeshikha. So everyone knows that there's 3 different mitzvot to do with the aniyim in your field: leket, shikha, and peah. Right? So peah is the corner, just like the corner of the field. And but that's it depends on what you're talking about. Olilot is on what? So on the grapes, on the this, on the different. We're talking about in general the concept. So you have leket, shikha, and peah. So we're talking about wheat. So the shikha is something that you forgot. Okay. Now, what happens exactly that we're talking about now? Something that you forget. So therefore, he comes and he says this. Imagine right now you're in the city, and you come and you say, 1 second, right? You were somech on your poalim, right? That they're going on your workers, that they're going to come. You're bringing something. Now, it's the worst thing to rely upon workers, because many times if you're not on top of your workers, what happens? They don't do the proper job. Yeah. So what happens? You come and you say, "Yode'ani she'omer sheyesh li basadeh poalim shachu." I know that my workers already forgot this omer that I have in the sadeh. Lo yeshicha. It's not going to be shicha, meaning I didn't forget about it, and therefore I could actually come and take it, and it's not going to be considered shicha, that the anim are going to be able to come and be able to take it. Okay? So what happens now is, right, he comes and he says, right, the Mishnah Peah, just that way everyone understands, explains that it has to be shicha for both the owners and the poalim, meaning it's not enough one or the other. They both need to forget. So it's not enough one forgets. Meaning here the poalim forgot it, the workers forgot it, but it's not enough. You need the balabait to forget it. So the fact that the balabait did not forget it yet, it's not enough. So he's in the city, and he comes and he says, "Yode'ani she'omer sheyesh li basadeh poalim shachu lo yeshicha." It should not be shicha. Yachol lo yeshicha. I would have thought it's not going to be shicha. Talmud lomar v'shachachta omer basadeh. Basadeh v'shachachta v'lo ba'ir. It means to say only if you forgot it when you came from the sadeh is a Hechal din shicha, but not if you forgot it and then afterwards you're already in the city. Meaning the fact that you already go to the city and you're not anymore in the field, it's already too late. Why? Because it said v'shachachta omer basadeh. It has to be in the field. So if you're right, if you are by the field, you're by the property, then yes, you could say it's not going to be shicha and it's not considered shicha. But the second that you actually get there, right, into the city, that's it. It's already considered shicha. And therefore, once it's considered shicha, you lost your rights, and therefore it's considered shicha. So, one second. So says the Gemara, Hagufa Kashya, 1 second. Right? We have to understand that in itself is a stira. Why? One more time. We're trying to talk about the entire concept of you being beside your field. Does it require that you have to be beside it in order for you to trigger, right? To trigger the laws of the field, right? Whether it's going to be that it's going to be acquiring or other halachot. So he comes and he says, one second. Let's try to understand this braita. The braita says, Yachol lo yeshikha. I would have thought to say that it's not going to be shicha when you're in the city. Alma, so he comes out, that it is shicha. And then the Gemara says, the Gemara says, Basadeh v'shachachta v'lo ba'ir. Alma lo avishicha. Then he says, it's not shicha. So decide, is it considered shicha or is it not shicha? Meaning like this, at the beginning of the Braita says, you're in the field, you're in the city, and you say, I know that there's omer, that my workers, they forgot it, and if right now the workers forgot it, right, it's not going to be considered shicha. So I would have thought to say that it's not shicha. What does that mean? What we're trying to say is that by me coming and saying that shelo yeh shicha, it means that be'emet, it is considered shicha. But then I come and I tell you that it's not going to be considered, because only if you forgot it when you came from the sadeh is it shicha, but not if you forgot it when you're coming in the city, right? So therefore the question that we ask is, it's a stira in the same braita. Meaning, I just finished the braita. Is it considered shicha or not? I don't know. The former part of the braita was mashma, that it is shicha. The latter part of the braita is mashma, that it's not shicha. So what's going on then? How do we explain it then? Elalav, but rather, hachi kamar. This is what it means to say. When it says basadeh, when it says that the owners are in the field, so that's shachuach mi karo. It means that they forgot it even before the poalim, right? And then the poalim come, and they're the ones that are doing it. So therefore, it's going to be considered shicha. Zachur ulvasof shachuach. But if he knew about it, and then only afterwards was it that the poalim was the ones that forgot it, it's not considered shicha. My tama, what's reasoning? Because since he's there, it's his chatzer, and therefore he's going to be zocheh. Aval bayir, but in the field, afilu zachur v'sof shachuach, even if it's going to be that he remembered about it and then he forgot, it's still considered, right, shicha. What's the reasoning? Teleta gabe, right, because he's not there, delezaki, right, delezaki le, that he's going to come and he's going to acquire it. So says the Gemara, mimai. How do you know that this is explanation, right, of the pasuk and the braita and everything? How do you know that you have to be, right, mamash there by the field, right? Dilma gzerata katuvu. Maybe it's a Gzerat HaKatuv. Devesadeh nehave shicha, that in the field it's going to be considered shicha. Ubeir lo nehem shicha, and by the city it's not going to be considered shicha. Meaning, it's not that because you have to be there to watch it, not be there to... Gzerat HaKatuv. You know what Gzerat HaKatuv is? Gzerat HaKatuv means it's a pasuk, and I don't understand the meaning. So you're going to ask me, why is it like that? The Torah said it. No reason. So don't start coming with your, Bava Metzia or your, no, and this is a reason, and then I'm going to compare it to this, compare it to that. Gzerat HaKatuv. Gzerat HaKatuv, and that's it. So says the Gemara, Amar Kra, the pasuk actually comes and it says, you can't say that the pasuk is coming to be ma'et shichat ha'id. He says, why? Amar Kra, the pasuk says, lo tashuv lekachto. What does it mean, lo tashuv lekachto? Lerabot shichat ha'id. This comes to include shichat ha'id. What does that mean? Even if the balabait is going to forget, right, the omer after he comes right back from the city, it's still considered shicha, right? Which means you're not allowed to pick it up. Lo tashuv lekachta means don't come and pick it up again, right? Because once it's considered shicha, kaddish, you're not allowed to touch it anymore. Kamarnu. So says the Gemara, but 1 second. Haimi baile le lav. That's a lav. One more time. There's only one mitzvah in the entire Torah which is based upon forgetfulness. And that is the mitzvah of shikha. Meaning there doesn't exist a mitzvah in the entire Torah. If you remember, this was a trick question that we asked on the parasha. We said, where does it exist a mitzvah that you forgot something? And the only mitzvah in the entire Torah that it exists is v'shachachta omer basadeh. You forgot the omer basadeh. And we had to explain why is that so important, because of forgetfulness, and then. But 1 second. It comes out that there's a positive commandment, but then there's a negative commandment. The positive commandment is v'shachachta. You have to forget. Okay? The negative commandment is lo tashuv lekachta. You're not allowed to come and pick it up again. So says the Gemara, what are you coming to tell me now? Lo tashuv lekachta comes to include shichat ha'id, that even if you forgot it in the city, it's considered shicha. I needed that pasuk for something else. You know what I needed that pasuk for? For the negative commandment. Before I only had a positive commandment, now I have a negative commandment. So answers the Gemara, im ken, if so, name a the pasuk should say, lo tikachenu. What does it mean, lo tikachenu? Do not take it. My lo tashuv. What does it mean, don't return to take it? He says, lerabot shichat ha'id. This comes to include that even, right, through the din of shicha is going to come out, even if it's going to be in the city. So ask the Gemara, ve'akati mi baile, you still need it for something else. There's a Mishnah, right? There's a Mishnah in Peah. The Mishnah says shelefanav. When it says shelefanav, what does it mean shelefanav? Right? We're talking about, right? What happens if it's at the end of the row that you didn't even pass it? Right? That means you're going through a row, and the wheat is going to be at the end of the row. So he comes and he says, right? Shelefanav and shicha. It's not considered shicha. Why is it not considered shicha? Because you didn't get there. For you to forget something, it means you passed by it and you forgot it there. But if you didn't even get there, it's not called a shicha. Shicha is not a sheleacharav, but if it's behind you, then yes shicha, there is shicha. Shehu beval tashuv, you're not allowed to go back and pick it up. Ze hakelal. This is the general rule. Kol shehu bebal tashuv, any time that you have the negative commandment of bal tashuv, right, is considered shicha. Kol she'eno bebal tashuv, eno shicha. If you're not going to be over on bal tashuv, there's no shicha. So it comes out that since the pasuk is needed to differentiate between shicha in front of you and shicha behind you, it's not extra. Meaning, one more time, in order for you to come and to teach you that there's going to be a difference between the city and the field, it has to be extra. Extra means superfluous, which means that you need it to teach you something. But if I'm going to show you that you need it for something, so then you can't use it anymore. So here, I need it. What do I need it for? I need it to tell you the differentiation between something that's in front of you and something that's behind you. If it's going to be in front of you, there's no isur of bal tashuv, so therefore, because you don't have to go back, you never got there. So if you don't have to go back to it. So if you don't need to go back to it, so therefore there's no shicha. But if it is behind you, which means you have to go back to it, so there is shicha. So therefore, if I already need that pasuk of lo tashuv lekachta in order to teach you when does shicha apply, so therefore it's not extra anymore. So answers the Gemara. Amar Ravashi says, the pasuk says, yiyeh. What does that mean? When it says in the pasuk, lager layetom ve'la'almana, yiyeh, it should be. So he comes and he says that's coming to include shikhata'id, which means the word yeh means, right, in any case, it's going to be considered shikha. Whether the balabait was by the sedeh, whether he was by the field. So ever since the Torah is coming and including shikhata'id, so obviously we have to say that that is actually explanation, right, of what we're talking about. Okay? Make sense? Yeah? Okay? Fine. Says the Gemara, V'chen amar Ula. Ula comes and he says, V'hu sheomed betzad sadeu. So Ula came and he said, this is talking about where you were on the side of the field. Okay? So what does that mean? V'chen amar Rabbi Chana. So to Rabbi Chana, he comes and he says the same thing. What are we referring to? He says, V'hu sheomed betzad sadeu. That means you always have to be there. And therefore, this is now exactly what we were talking about beforehand, that when you want your chatzer to acquire, you have to be there. Okay? Fine. Okay? Okay. 8v. We're going to ask, right? 8v Rabbi Abba le'ula. Rabbi Abba comes and he asks Ula. This is a Mishnah in Ma'aser Sheni. Yeah? Ma'aser B'Ram Gamliel Uzkenim. Shayu ba'im basfina. So there was a story with Ram Gamliel and the Zekinim, that they were coming on a boat. Yeah, so they were coming on a boat. And what happens is that they did not come and they did not separate Maaser. So they suspected, right, maybe the people in the house are going to come and they're going to start eating. And they're going to start eating tevel. Remember, tevel is untithed produce, which means that if you have things in your house and you didn't take off Trumot or Masrot, and now your family come and they start eating it, you just did an Avirah. You have to take off Trumot or Masrot. So Amar Rabbi Gamliel says Rabbi Gamliel, and now remember, Gamliel is on the boat. So he comes and he says, Isur shani atid lamod. Right? The 10th of the tevuah, the grain, that I'm going to come and separate for Masechet Rishon. Remember, Masechet Rishon goes to the Levi. Chazak u'baruch. So Masechet Rishon goes to the Levi. So 1/10 of the property, 10% is going to go to the Levi. That's Masechet Rishon. Natun Yoshua is going to go to Yoshua, right? This is Yoshua ben Chananya, which was in the boat. So therefore, Yoshua ben Chananya was a Levi. So he comes and he says, I'm going to come and I'm going to take off 10%. That's going to go to him. To who? To Yoshua ben Chananya, which is on the boat with him. Very good. Yudalef Amud Bet, 11b. Umekomo, the place is muskarlo, is actually rented to him. What does that mean? We know that there's a concept that we do this, by the way, for the chametz. I don't know if you actually realize, why is it that we need that the chametz should be in a designated area? You know that the rabbis always come and they write down, where is the chametz? Right? That is one reason. The main reason, pay attention, the place where the chametz is rented out to the goy.
That's what we say. So we
No. One more time, right? I'm not speaking the same language. There are two different halachot. Number one is if the goy wants to come and he wants to get it. I'm going to ask you a question about Haki. The goy, even though he could technically come, I'm going to guarantee you, right now, he's not going to come. Do you still have to write down where it is? Yes. Why? He's not going to come. He's not going to come to get it.
What do you mean why?
The reason why is because the place where the chametz is rented out to him in order to acquire it. Not that right now he wants to come and pick it up. But even if he's not going to come and pick it up, I need it in a place that it's rented. That's why we come and we ask him permission. And we say, Mr. Goy, by the way, it could be that sometimes we wrote that a room is rented out to you because the chametz is in the room. So for example, sometimes you have a storage room or whatever it is, and we write down the storage room, and you rent it out to the goy. And then you remember that there's one thing which is not chametz, that you need it. Now, technically speaking, if that's rented out to the goy, you have no permission to go into that room. I cannot go into somebody else's property, and I just rented it out to him. So therefore, we ask him when we do the mechirat chametz, do you mind if, for example, I forgot something in that storage room, even though I just came and I rented it out to you, can I go in just to get that item, which obviously is not chametz? Because if it's chametz, there's nothing to talk about. But obviously, which is not chametz, do you give me permission?
The form that we signed, does it say that?
Many times it's in the form, and even if it's not in the form, then we ask it verbally to the person in front of everybody,
it's implicit,
right?
it's
And no, but we have to say it. We say it. We tell the goy. We
You're
ask
the
him
Rabbi,
permission.
You do it on
We
behalf
ask
of
him
your
permission.
congregation. You probably say it.
Well, yes, we say it. But I don't. I do it with other people. Okay, so that's what we're saying it. So therefore, that's the reason why it has to be mekomo muskarlo. Mekomo muskarlo means that it's already rented out to him in order that he's going to acquire it. So it's a reason of acquisition. Okay, not because of anything else. V'isur acher. Now he comes and he says there's going to be an extra 10%, right? Shani atil lamod. What is that extra 10%?
Maserani.
Ah, very good. Either Maser Shani or Maser Ani. Here we're talking about Maser Ani. Okay, so obviously, right, it had to be in which years is Maser Ani?
Third and the sixth.
Chazak Baruch, third and sixth. Yeah, they're on the ball today. Yeah, Chazak Baruch, so third and sixth. So, Isur Acher, Shani Atil Lamod, is given to Akiva ben Yosef. Why? Akiva ben Yosef was a Gabbai Tzedakah. Now, Rabbi Akiva, was on the boat also during Elmaleh. So one more time, you had the Lewi and you had the Gabbai, right? The Parnas of the Aniyim, which were both on the boat. Okay, Umekomo muskarlo. And again, the place is rented out to him. So therefore, he could actually make the acquisition. So says the Gemara, I don't understand you. Even if you're going to come and you're going to tell me now that you're renting out the place, right? The venue of where it's stored, were they right by the field? You just came and you just told me that in order for you to acquire something, you have to be beside the field. And if you're going to be in Honolulu, even though it's inside your field, you do not acquire it. So how did he do it? He's on the boat. Rabbi Akiva's on the boat. Rabbi Yeshua's on the boat. He's coming and he's giving the 10% to the Lewi, which he gave it to Rabbi Yeshua. He's giving the 10% to the Ani, which he's giving to Rabbi Akiva. So how does it work? Everyone's on the boat. So what's going on? They missed the boat. So says the Gemara, Elmaleh, he comes, right? He comes and he says, Dami, Hai Mirabbanan, says Ula to Rabbi Abba, this, right, Talmid Chacham, is like compared to a Kidalo Gamri in Sheshmata. Is like one of the people that he never learned. Right? As if he never learned. Right? That means for them to say such a thing, the guy never learned in his life. So Ki'ata leSurya, when Rabbi Abba came to Surah, Elmaleh, we went to the Chachamim, Hachi Amar Ula. This is what Ula says, that a Chatzer, which is not mishtameret, is not koneh unless you're going to be there. Ve'hachi utriti. So I asked him from the story of Rabbi Gamliel. Elmaleh ha'u mirabbanan, said one of the rabbis, Rabbi Gamliel metaltale agav mekarkaya hekna lehem. He says he's being makneh, right? Maaser b'kinyan agav. Right? What does that mean? Right? What are you doing with the goy? And that's one of the reasons why you're doing. Remember, with the goy on chametz, what's the reason why you have to be so meticulous? Why is it that it can't be that anybody could just not come and sell chametz to a goy? You know why? We do every form of kinyan possible with a goy. Because there's a machloket. How does a goy acquire? How does a goy acquire? Does he acquire, right, with money? Does he acquire with document? Does he acquire with kinyan agav? Does he acquire with mishicha? Does he acquire? So what we do is, in order to make sure that the chametz is 100% his, because if not, chas v'shalom, chametz is not his. If the chametz is not his, it's mine. If it's mine, chametz shaval of Pesach, I'm chayav karet. After Pesach, I come and I give it to, we're talking about karet. Imagine. So look how many averot we come and we say, but he didn't do a proper sale. So what do? We come, and what we do is we try to make every kinyan with a goy. So number one, we come and we already give him part of the chametz. That's the first thing. Right? I don't know if you ever seen it, right? We've always seen they come and they already give him a bottle of whiskey. Here. You're already giving him part of the chametz, meaning it's not just like you're doing a dog. No. Here's part of the chametz. You already give it to him. He comes, he picks it up, he does kinyan hagbah, raising it up. He starts walking around with it. He's doing the meshicha. We come and we give him a document. A document is a document. We come and he has to pay money for it. So payment of money, right? Which we do a handshake, which is simtunta, which is what basically what we're trying to do is
Because it doesn't
is
go
we're
with it,
trying
so
to make
it's
sure that the goy acquires our chametz 100%. So he comes and he says this is called kinyan agav. What is kinyan agav? Kinyan agav is that, for example, I have a field. So agav that I'm going to acquire the field, I'm going to acquire the metaltalin which is on the field. You remember that we spoke about this. That, for example, if I'm going to acquire the house, so I acquire the couch which is in the house. So, for example, you're selling me the house and you're selling me a couch which is in the house. I don't have to go into the house and pick up the couch or move the couch. The second I acquire the house, I acquire the metaltalin, which is the movable objects inside the house. So that's what he comes and he tells him. He says, "Hikna lahem et maaser b'kinyan agav," just like we learned in the Mishan Kiddushin, right? That when you have nechasim which do not have metaltalin, they're going to be acquired with properties which is karka, and therefore that's why he's going to acquire it. So therefore, it wasn't because of Torat Chatzer. It was kinyan agav, meaning there's two different things. There is something which is called kinyan chatzer, and then there's something which is called kinyan agav. Kinyan chatzer means my property acquires this object. That's called kinyan chatzer. So, for example, I come and I have the bird coming, it lands in my field, I come and I say, my chatzer is going to acquire it. That's called kinyan chatzer. Kinyan agav is that you're coming and you're acquiring to me the field, and by the way, the field, agav, derech agav means by the way. So by the way, there was also movable objects there. So there was a lawnmower, yeah, in the field. So that's called kinyan agav. By the way of the field, I acquired the lawnmower. So that for sure you're going to come and you're going to acquire it. So that's why he came and he told them, right? That's why basically Ula came to Rabbi Abba and he said, "You never learned a Gemara in your life. What are you asking me from?" Right, you're coming. Now imagine, this is the rabbi coming. This is how he's speaking to. Nowadays you come and you tell it to one of your students, they get offended, they don't come back for another month. Right? But he went and he told it to him. But the guy came, not only accepted, he went to Surah and he comes and he asked him, by the way, this is what happened, this is the halakha that he said. I asked him this question, this is what he answered me. So then they come and they say, but it's simple. What are you talking about? What are you comparing both cases? One is Torat Chatzer, one is Kinyan Agav. Tzvei dinim, two different dinim, two different things. So you can't ask a question from it. Don't make a kesh, right? Don't be makish from one thing to another if they're not comparable. Fine. Rabbi Zera, kabla. Rabbi Zera, he accepted this answer, right, of the Rabbanan. But Rabbi Abba, lo kibla. He didn't accept it. He didn't like this answer. So Amar Rava comes and he says, Shapid avi de lo kabla. I understand why he didn't want to accept this answer. Vechi lo haya lahem sudar liklot mimenu bechalipin. I've got another way. You know what sudar is? Sudar, right, is basically, we do this many times by the weddings. Nowadays, many times they'll use a pen. Sometimes they'll use even a kippah, right? What I try to do is, I try to remember and actually take a sudar. A sudar is something very similar to this, very similar, right? But I take usually the fancy ones, you know, the ones that you put over here. So I take those fancy ones, right? And you come, and you, I have. Yeah, so what you do is you take. Okay, very good. So he says, I have. Yeah, also. Yeah. So he comes and he says he takes that. That's called sudar. What is sudar? It's like a handkerchief that you come and you give it to someone, and when they come and they take it, they do what's called kinyan sudar. So, and by doing that, you do chalipin. Chalipin was, for example, if you remember, we're talking about that, right? I have the chamor and you have the shore. We want to switch over the things, but I'm not going to your house. He's not, so the animals are not here. So what do? You give over the sudar, and by coming and making the acquisition through this handkerchief, each one acquires whatever it is. You're acquiring whatever it was the other one was giving it to you. Yes, lifting it up. Yes, 100%. Okay, so that's called kinyan chalipin. Okay, so he comes and he says that's one of the ways of the kinyanim. So he went and he said, what? Nobody had the sudar. So I don't understand. Nobody had a sudar. Ella, but rather, tovat hana'ah ena mamon. Tovat hana'ah is not considered money, right? In order liknot mimenu chalipin, in order to acquire it, chalipin. Hachanami tovat hana'ah ena mamon liknot agabe karka, which means like this. Something very, very incredible. Listen to this. I think you guys don't understand the depth, right, of what we're saying. Right now, right, I'm going to ask you to please write out for me all your assets. Yeah, write out all your assets. Sometimes it happens when a person moves to America and all of a sudden they would have to come and, like, you know, in order to become American, all these things, they would have to write out all their assets, right, of what do they have in order to come and to become American or whatever the story is. Okay, fine. All of a sudden, what happens now is that you come and you start writing things down. Now, we know that there's a concept of gross and net, correct? What does that mean? You have how much you make, and then afterwards, after taxes. The exact same concept happens after Maaser. Which means, if you made 100, right? Let's say we're talking about $100. So really, be'emet, $10, right, is minimum, right? It goes to Maaser. So really, be'emet, you only have $90. So in your assets, you're only writing down $90. But the question is, 1 second, but you have $10. So you have this $10. So what's going on? So this $10 is not really yours. It's called tovat hana'ah. Tovat hana'ah means you have the benefit of who to give it to. You have the benefit of who to give it to. But, to choose who you give it to, but it's not yours. And it's not considered money. So if somebody asks you, 1 second, but you have 100, the answer is, I don't really have 100. Because those 10 that I'm giving to the maaser is not money. It's not considered money. It's tovat hana'ah, yes, it means that I decide who does it go to, I allocate the funds, but it's not real money, but it's not mine. And therefore it's not money. So he comes and he says, since it's not real money, kinyan chalipin does not help. So Huadin says, what he's saying over here is, the same thing you can't do agav on tovat hana'ah. Meaning, what was the first 10%? Maaser Rishon. Right? Maaser Rishon was Maaser. It goes to the Levi. But it's only tovat hana'ah that he decides who does it go to. So he was deciding he was going to Rabbi Yeshua, right? That was on the boat.
Put a monetary
right?
value on that, but not much.
But no, but that's what we're saying. It's not considered money at all, but it's not yours. That's just ashkafa of the Torah to show you that money that you get of the 10% is not yours. You have the one, you are the one which is in charge of allocating. You're like a guarantor to make sure it goes to the right
But
place.
you might be able to.
But it's not yours. That's what we're saying. It's not your money. That's the proper outlook,
To betroth the woman
right?
with that benefit.
No, 1 second. No, 1 second. Tovat hana'ah. 1 minute. So now, what happens though is that the first 10% was tovat hana'ah. What is tovat hana'ah? It's not really his, and it was going to Rabbi Yoshua. Second 10% was to Rabbi Akiva, to the Aniyim. So therefore, he comes and he says that cannot be acquired through kinyan agav, just like it cannot be acquired through kinyan chalipin. So says the Gemara, velohi, but it's not true. Why? Matanot keuna netina ketiva behu. When it says by the matanot keuna, remember how many presents do the Kohanim take? 24 presents. There are 24 presents that go to the Kohen. The matanot says the Gemara, velohi, but it's incorrect. Why? Matanot keuna netina ketiva behu. The Gemara says matanot keuna, it's written netina. What does that mean? Venatata lalewi lagel yatom l'almana. What does that mean? You have to give it to them matana. You're not selling it to them. Now chalipin is always going to be derech mekach umemkari, which means that you're actually doing it like a sale. So it's not a sale. So that's why you're not allowed to acquire it to the levi with chalipin. Metaltalin agav karka netina alimtahi. But when you're doing metaltalin by karka, that is a good, right? That is a good netina. That's 100% giving it to it. So therefore, you're allowed to be makneh kinyan agav. Meaning, one more time, he went and he said Rabbi Abba, you know why I don't understand the answer? Because it doesn't help chalipin. Why doesn't it help chalipin? Because it's only the good benefit. That's what you said. Good benefit, meaning the benefit of the allocating the funds, but it's not really yours. Says the Gemara, what are you talking about? The reason why is that it says you have to give it. Now, chalipin is not giving. Chalipin is always a sale. Meaning, I'm going to sell you my horse, or whatever it is. It's not here. I give you the handkerchief, you pick it up, you acquire my horse, which is not here. That means even though you didn't pull it, it's still going to be, right, yours. Why? Kinyan chalipin. But that's by a sale, not by giving over, by a present. It's written by the Levi, you have to give it as a present. So therefore, by there, it does help giving it kinyan agav. So therefore, it does help. Fine. The Gemara is going to bring another answer, right, on the question that Rabbi Abba asked to Ula from the Mishnah. Rav Papa comes and he says, Dat acheret makneotan shani. He comes and he says like this, it's going to be different when you have somebody else that's acquiring the Dat acheret is acquiring it to him. So for example here, Rabbi Gamliel, he was the one that was being makneh to Rabbi Yoshua the Maaser Rishon and to Rabbi Akiva the Maaser Ani. So in this case, you don't need him to be beside the field. Why? Because it's much easier to acquire it to someone when there's somebody else that's acquiring it to you. So one more time. For example, in such a case where you have right? In such a case where you have, right, the animal going into your field, is there any dat acheret makneh? Yeah, is there anybody else that's makneh to you this animal? Obviously not. You're being makneh from it. You're being koneh from hefker, from Hakadosh Baruch Hu, from hefker. It's hefker. It came into a chazak baruch. There, you need to be beside the property. But in the case where it's going to be that I'm the one that's being makneh to you, even if you're not beside the property, you still acquire it. That's another answer. And that's why you have dat makneh, which means you have somebody else which is doing the acquisition to giving it to you. So says the Gemara.
It's a very big issue.
Umena Temra, how do we know the Tnan? How do we know this? The Tnan was we learned in the Mishnah. Ra'otan Ratzina Chara Metzia. He saw that people were running after the Metzia. V'amar Rabbi Yomi Rabbi Yochanan. Vehu Sheratza Charenu Magian, that he could actually run after it and get it. Ubai Rabbi Yomi comes and he asks, B'matana Heach, what's the case of the present? Right? What is the case? It's talking about a present, which means if right now the tzvi and the gozolot was one person and the owners are coming and running after it, right? And he wants to acquire it as a present through kinyan chatzer, right? Does he have to actually be that it's going to be there? And if he can't get it, then he doesn't acquire it, right? He could actually retract or not. So Kabbalim and Rabbi Bar Kana came and he actually accepted the svara of Rabbi Yirmiyah that there is a difference between matana and efker, and therefore he actually said, you're right. Matana, you are going to be koneh. Afal pi sheratz acharem v'magian. My tama, what's the reasoning? Lav mishum dedat acharem makneh otan shani, because there's somebody else. There's somebody else that's there, and he's actually doing the acquisitions. So the fact that, right, somebody else is there and he's doing the acquisitions, that in fact is already going to be enough. Okay, fine. So now the Gemara says, Amaleh Rav Shimi Rav Papa, says Rav Shimi Rav Papa. 1 second. Get. There's dat acheret. Why? The husband has to come and he has to be makneh to the woman. And Ula comes and he says, Vehu shomed b'tzad beita b'tzad chetzera. She could acquire it if he's going to throw it into her field, but she has to be there. Now, according to you, why does she have to be there? If you just told me that when you have dat acheret, you do not mean to be there, so what's the problem then? Answers the Gemara, Shani get, it's different get, te'ite bal korcha, that it goes against her will. So therefore, since it goes against her will, right, so therefore her chatzer cannot acquire it against her will if she's not beside it. Meaning, like this, usually in the case of the hefker, you want it. Why wouldn't you want it? It's something, a deer came into your field, a bird came in, why wouldn't you want it? There's nothing negative about it. A get is bal korcha. Since it's bal korcha, in order to
it could be negative.
Well, exactly. So therefore, because of that, she has to be there in order to come to acquire it. So the Gemara says, "Matkif la Rav Shesha ben Davidi." So ask Rav Shesha ben Davidi, "Felav kal v'chomer." Is what it's not a kal v'chomer. Uma get diita bal korcha. If you're going to tell me now that there's going to be a get, which is going to be against her will, I omede betzad beita ubetzad chatzera in. Only if it's going to be betzad beita ubetzad chatzera, then yes. Ilolo, but if not, no. So matana de midata. Right, the midate lo kolshken says when it's going to be a matana, right, which you're going to be zoche, right, so therefore shouldn't be a kolshken. Meaning like this, I'm going to try to make a kavachomer if the get could be done against your will, and it's only going to be if you're going to be beside there, right. So therefore, then it acquires it. If it's not, you're not going to be beside there, you don't acquire it. So a matana that you do need your will, meaning you need your dat. So therefore, nobody could accept a present against their will. Right? You have to remember that. Meaning a get, technically before the Cherem and Gereshom, you could give it to her against her will. But technically, right, a get could be against her will. Right? Kiddushin you need with her will. That's why Kiddushin we want to make sure is the ring, right? Is it Shaveh Pruta? Is it this? We want to, why? Because we need her dat. Meaning a person cannot force a marriage on a woman.
Like
a woman,
the meeting of the mind.
Exactly. You need the meeting of the minds to do with wedding. Divorce, you don't need the meeting of the mind. Okay, so he comes and he says, but the question is then, but by a present, same thing. You cannot force me to take a present. So it shouldn't be a kol sheken that I have to be there. Elamar Ravashi, but rather Ravashi comes and he says, Chatzer itrabai mishum yad. You'll bet Amud on the top. Chatzer is going to be included because of yad. You remember we had a machloket. Is the chatzer of a person an extension of his hand or an extension? It's like acting on his behalf like a shaliach. So he says, "Velo gad'ami shlichut." So it's not any worse than shlichut. So gabe get chovula, since a get is actually negative for her because now she's a divorced woman. So en chavin le'adam ela b'fanav. So therefore, you never give a chov to somebody unless it's in front of their face. By b'matana, it's something good. So zachin le'adam shelo b'fanav. So therefore, we should give it to you. Why? Because it's going to be something good to you. Meaning you're gaining from it. You have nothing what to lose. So says the Gemara, what? Gufa. Let's try to analyze this Mishnah. The Mishnah says if you see people running after a Metzia, right? And then what did our Mishnah say? You come and say my field is going to acquire it, so it's going to acquire. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, vehu. What are we dealing with? Sheratza charein u'magian, right? That he could run after it and he could get it. So by Rabbi Yochanan comes and he asks, "B'matana heach." What's the case of matana then? Right? What was the case of matana? Right? That means if right now we're talking about the tzvi, the deer and the birds belong to somebody else, right? And the balim, they want to acquire it to you through kinyan chatzer. So he says that's what we're talking about, that you have to be it in such a case, right? And if you cannot run after it, no. Which means even if he can't run after it and he can't get it, it's still going to be his. So by Rava comes and he says, what about zarak arnaki bepetach zeh v'yatza bepetach acher? Imagine right now, right? You come and you throw a wallet inside of a house, and you went and you made it hefker to anybody that wants to come and get it. V'yatza bepetach acher, which means you didn't realize you threw it into the house, but the door was open in the front and also in the back. So it went through all the airspace of the house until the end of the house. I mean, it went straight through, right?
Classic Gemara.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you listen. You have a good pitch. Yeah, you were able to pitch it very, very far. Boom, went straight through until the other way. So now the question is, avir she'en sofo lanuach kemunach tami or no? Since right now it was in the middle of the airspace in my house, but it wasn't actually going to land in my house. So does that acquire midin chatzer or not? So Elmaleh Rav Papa Rava says Rav Papa to Rava, V'amri Rava bar Matana Rava, or Rav Matana bar Rava, right? Rav Ada bar Matana to Rava, V'amri Lazar says Ravina to Rava, Lavainu Metni. That's our Mishnah. Ra'ot Achar Metzia, and Rabbi Yochanan says in Yochanan, V'usharat Acharem again that you could actually reach it. Ubai Rabbi Yirmiyah Matana. What about by a present? V'kebilamin Rav Kana bar Rav Kana. He accepted it. That by a matana, even though you cannot get it, it's still going to be yours. So Elmaleh, he comes and he says, so therefore it comes out that by matana, even though you cannot get it, it's yours, right? And therefore it does not have to land into your field. So the same thing here, right? Even though it's not going to land in your thing, it's a matana. So Elmaleh, he comes and he tells him, mitkalgel kamarta, right? You're talking about something which is rolling on the ground.
Is that the purse?
Well, yes, he comes. No. Sorry, the purse was in the middle there.
Oh,
was midair. The bird and the other thing and the deer. So he says, "Shana mitgalgel techemunach dami," which means when something's rolling around, that's considered that's already resting on the ground. Once it's resting on the ground, you acquire it, even though it's not going to stop. Right. Meaning, even though it's like a ball, so it's rolling through, but it's going through my property. The second that it's going, even though it's not going to stop in my property, but the second that it's going through, I acquire it. I cannot compare that case to the case of the airspace, which is going through, right, which is going to go,
it's on the ground though,
right, on the through it.